Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling something that at first glance might seem a little frivolous. We're talking about the little red dress, and you guys have sent us a mountain of research on this.
It's a lot more than just fabric and thread.
It really is. I've got this book here, The Truth About Little Red Dress, and it dives into some pretty deep stuff. Evolutionary biology, psychology, even how this color's been used and maybe even abused and advertised. I'm really intrigued.
It's amazing how these primal instincts, these ancient signals, still seem to have so much power over us in the modern world.
Yeah, so let's start with the basic. Why does red stand out to us? I mean, it's not like we're bulls in a china shop here.
Well, if you think about it in nature, red often signals importance, like a ripe apple or the flush of blood. These are things that our ancestors had to pay attention to for survival.
Right.
And it's not just human. Cardinals, baboons. A flash of red often means something's up.
So it's like a universal language almost.
Yeah.
But how does that translate to a woman in a red dress?
Well, the book draws a really interesting parallel to the peacock's tail.
Okay.
It's a costly display, right? It takes energy to grow those feathers, makes the peacock more vulnerable to predators.
Yeah.
But it also signals strength and genetic fitness to potential mates.
So like a peacock, a woman in a red dress is making a statement. A bold choice. It attracts attention.
Exactly. And that attention isn't just cultural. There's a biological component at play here. Studies have shown that men rate women in red as more attractive. And get this, their testosterone levels can spike around women who are ovulating.
Hold on. You're saying that men can sense when a woman is most fertile? That sounds a bit far-fetched.
It's not conscious, of course, but there are these subtle changes in a woman's appearance and even her scent during ovulation that men might be picking up on subconsciously. It's all tied back to our evolutionary past, the drive to procreate.
Okay, so there's a primal element to this attraction to red. It's not just a fashion statement.
Right.
It's tapping into something much deeper.
It is, and this is where things get really interesting because that primal attraction has been exploited, right? Think about how many ads you've seen using a woman in a red dress to sell everything from perfume to cars.
Oh yeah, that classic Chanel number 5 ad. The model in the red dress, looking all seductive. Or that Dolce & Gabbana campaign, the one with the wolves and the Red Riding Hood theme.
Yeah.
Pretty provocative stuff.
Right, and those campaigns aren't just about selling product. They're tapping into our primal instinct. They're using that red dress symbolism to trigger a desire, a need to purchase.
So it's like we're being manipulated by these ancient signals, even in the modern world of advertising.
It's something to consider next time you see that little red dress on a billboard or in a magazine. What's being sold here? The product, or the woman, or maybe both.
Okay, this is starting to get a little uncomfortable. I mean, if this attraction to red is so deeply ingrained, are we all just slaves to our biology?
That's a big question. And it's one that we'll definitely be exploring further in this deep dive. But before we get too deep into the philosophical implications, let's bring it back down to earth for a minute.
Sounds good. I'm all for keeping things grounded.
Yep.
So what about the social and cultural aspects of the little red dress?
Yeah, it's not all primal instincts and advertising manipulation. The red dress has a rich cultural history too. Think about Daisy Buchanan in The Great Gatsby. Her red dress wasn't just about beauty, it was about status, wealth, unattainability.
And on the flip side, you've got Hester Prynne's Scarlet Letter.
Right.
A very different kind of red dress, symbolizing shame and judgment.
Exactly. It's a symbol that can be both empowering and dangerous depending on the context.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. Biology, psychology, advertising, cultural significance.
Yeah.
But there's one perspective we haven't touched on yet, and that's the red pill community.
Ah, yes. The red pill community sees the little red dress as a very potent symbol of female power and control.
Wait, are they saying that women are consciously manipulating men with their clothing choices?
That's one interpretation, yes. They believe that women are aware of the biological and psychological effects of red, and they use this knowledge to their advantage in the mating game.
Whoa, that's a pretty controversial take.
It is, and it's important to note that this isn't a universally shared perspective. A lot of people would argue that it's reductive and even misogynistic to suggest that women are deliberately using their clothing to control men.
Right, it's just one perspective among many. And it's important to be aware of the potential biases involved.
Absolutely. But even if you don't agree with the red pill viewpoint, it's interesting to consider how this community interprets the little red dress. It highlights just how loaded and multifaceted this symbol truly is.
So we've got biology, psychology, advertising, cultural significance, and now the red pill perspective. Where do we go from here?
Well, the source material dives even deeper. It explores things like the historical evolution of the little red dress, its representation in popular culture, and even its potential future.
That's a lot to unpack. We're going to need a bigger closet, so to speak. But I'm ready to dive in. This is turning out to be a lot more interesting than I expected.
It's a fascinating journey, that's for sure. The little red dress is a window into our deepest desires, our cultural norms, and the complex dynamics between men and women.
I'm hooked. Let's take a quick pause here. And when we come back, we'll explore the history of this iconic garment and how it's evolved over time. Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were just starting to uncover the layers of meaning behind the little red dress. So let's step back in time and see how this garment has been perceived through the ages.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. We talked about primal instincts and modern advertising, but where does the history of the little red dress actually begin?
Well, the book points out that in Victorian England, red was a pretty taboo color, especially for clothing. It was associated with sin, the devil, things you didn't want to be associated with.
Wow, that's a far cry from the modern image of red as sexy and alluring. It is, isn't it? It just goes to show how much cultural norms can change over time.
Yeah.
But the shift really started to happen in the early 20th century, around the Roaring 20s.
Okay.
Think flapper dresses, jazz music, a sense of liberation and rebellion.
So the red dress became a symbol of this newfound freedom, a way for women to express their individuality and, dare I say, their sexuality.
Exactly. And this trend continued throughout the 20th century. You see it in Hollywood with icons like Marilyn Monroe using the red dress to project an image of power and seduction.
So the red dress went from taboo to glamorous, a symbol of female sexuality in the modern world. But we also talked about how it can be empowering.
Absolutely. And that's important to remember. The red dress can also be a symbol of strength, confidence, and defiance. The suffragettes, for example, used red to symbolize their fight for women's rights.
That's right. And more recently, you've got women like Michelle Obama or Kamala Harris wearing red on important occasions, projecting an image of power and authority.
It's a complex symbol, that's for sure. It can be a tool of the patriarchy, but also a symbol of rebellion against it.
This deep dive is making me look at the little red dress in a whole new light.
Yeah.
We've talked about the history and the cultural significance, but I'm still curious about the science behind this color's allure.
Right. That's a key piece of the puzzle, and that ties back to what we discussed earlier about evolutionary biology. Remember, the color red stands out, right?
Yeah.
It captures attention. In nature, it's often associated with things like ripe fruit, blood, even danger.
So our attraction to red is hardwired into our brain.
There's certainly evidence to suggest that. Studies have shown that the color red actually triggers physiological responses in humans.
Really?
Yeah. Increased heart rate, faster breathing, even a spike in blood pressure.
Wow.
It's not just aesthetic, there's a physical reaction happening.
So it's like our bodies are responding to this color on a primal level, even if we're not consciously aware of it.
Precisely. And this reaction is likely rooted in our evolutionary past. For our ancestors, the color red could signal danger, but it could also signal opportunity. Finding food, attracting a mate. We're still carrying those instincts today.
So it's not just men who are drawn to red.
Right. Interestingly, research suggests that women are actually more likely to wear red when they're ovulating.
Oh, wow.
It's like a subconscious way of signaling their fertility, tapping into that primal attraction.
This is fascinating. It seems like there's this complex interplay of biology, psychology, and culture all wrapped up in this one garment.
Absolutely. And that's what makes the little red dress such a fascinating and enduring symbol.
We've covered a lot of ground here. The history, the psychology, even the evolutionary roots of this attraction to red. But the source material also mentions this term rape culture. And I have to admit, I'm not entirely sure I understand what that means.
It's a difficult but important topic to address. Rape culture refers to the ways in which society normalizes and excuses sexual violence against women. The idea that women are somehow responsible for preventing sexual assault or that their clothing choices can justify it.
It's a disturbing thought. So how does this relate to the little red dress?
Well, as we've discussed, the red dress is often seen as a symbol of sexuality and allure.
Right.
And sadly, this can be twisted by some to justify or excuse sexual violence.
You mean the idea that if a woman is wearing a red dress, she's somehow asking for it?
Exactly. It's a dangerous and harmful misconception, and it's something we need to challenge. A woman's clothing choices never justify assault.
I completely agree. It's the perpetrator who is responsible for their actions, not the victim.
Absolutely. And it's important to understand that rape culture goes beyond victim blaming. It's about the ways in which society normalizes and even glorifies sexual violence against women.
You mean things like jokes about rape or the way sexual violence is often portrayed in movies and TV shows?
Exactly. These things contribute to a culture where sexual violence is seen as acceptable or even inevitable.
This is heavy stuff,
Yeah.
but I'm glad we're talking about it. It's important to be aware of these issues.
I agree. And it's important to note that there are people working to challenge rape culture and create a safer world for women.
Okay.
Organizations supporting survivors of sexual assault and activists working to change the laws and policies that perpetuate this problem.
That's good to hear. It sounds like there's still a lot of work to be done.
There is, but I believe that by having these conversations and raising awareness, we can start to create a culture where sexual violence is no longer tolerated
So we've covered a lot of ground: the history, the psychology, the cultural impact, the societal issues. What about the future? Where does the little red dress go from here?
That's a great question. The book suggests that the red dress is constantly evolving, adapting to the changing times.
So what might the future hold for this iconic garment?
Well, one possibility is that it becomes even more personalized, individualistic.
Hmm.
As women continue to break free from traditional gender roles, they might use the red dress to express their unique personalities and styles.
So we might see an even wider range of red dresses, from classic and elegant to bold and avant-garde.
Exactly. And with advancements in technology, we might even see red dresses incorporating things like wearable tech or interactive elements.
Wow, that's pretty futuristic. But what about the potential downsides? We've talked about how the red dress can be used to objectify women. Could these new technologies make that problem worse?
It's a valid concern. We have to be aware of how technology can be used in harmful ways. But I also believe that technology can be a force for good.
Okay.
It can empower women and give them more control over their own bodies and images.
So the double-edged sword, like so many things we talked about today.
Exactly. The future of the red dress, like the future of society itself, is full of both promise and peril.
This is really making me think about the power of clothing and how it can be both a tool of oppression and a symbol of
It
liberation.
is powerful, isn't it? And I think that's the main takeaway here. The little red dress, like any piece of clothing, is a blank canvas. It's up to each individual to decide what it means and how they use it.
That's a powerful thought. Speaking of individual interpretations, the source material mentions this concept of the male gaze, the idea that women are often portrayed in media and art from a male perspective, potentially leading to objectification. How do you see the red dress fitting into this concept?
That's a complex question, and I think nuance is important here.
Yeah.
On one hand, the little red dress has often been used to appeal to the male gaze. Look at how it's portrayed in advertising, movies, even fashion shows. It's often presented as a way for women to attract male attention.
So in that sense, it could be seen as perpetuating the objectification of women.
Potentially, yes, but it's important to remember that the male gaze isn't a monolithic thing.
Right.
There are many different ways in which men view women, and not all of them are objectifying or harmful.
So it comes down to individual perception.
To some extent, yes, but the broader cultural context plays a role too.
Yeah.
The way the little red dress is portrayed in media can influence how men perceive women, and that can have real-world consequences.
That makes sense. So what can we do to challenge these harmful portrayals and create a more equitable and respectful representation of women in media and society?
That's a big question, and I don't have all the answers, but I think it starts with awareness.
Okay.
We need to be critical of the images we consume and the messages they send. Challenge the objectification of women, whether it's in advertising, movies, or even our everyday interactions.
And we need to support women who are creating their own narratives and challenging the status quo.
Absolutely. There are so many incredible women out there using their voices and platforms to fight for equality and change the way women are perceived in the world.
This deep dive has really made me think about the power of clothing and how it can be both a tool of oppression and a symbol of liberation.
It is powerful, isn't it? And I think that's the ultimate takeaway here. The little red dress, like any piece of clothing, is a blank canvas. It's up to us to decide what it means and how we use it.
This has been an incredible journey, but I know there's even more to explore in the source material.
There is. We've only just scratched the surface of this fascinating topic.
Well, I'm eager to continue this journey. But for now, let's shift gears and explore a particularly intriguing aspect that the source material delves into: the ovulatory shift. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been uncovering the many layers of meaning behind the little red dress. And before the break, we were about to explore something called the ovulatory shift.
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting. It's the idea that a woman's attractiveness actually fluctuates throughout her menstrual cycle, peaking during ovulation.
Yeah, I remember you touched on this earlier. It's not just about looks, though, right?
Right. It's this fascinating interplay of hormones, biology, and even psychology. Studies suggest that women tend to be more outgoing, more flirtatious, even take more risks during their fertile window.
So it's like nature's way of giving them a little boost to attract a mate.
You could say that. And interestingly, the source material suggests that this shift might also influence women's fashion choices.
So they might be more drawn to wearing a red dress during ovulation. Consciously, of course.
Exactly. Remember we talked about how red can be a subconscious signal of fertility and vitality? So it makes sense that women might gravitate towards this color when they're at their most fertile.
It's like they're tapping into this ancient primal energy even if they're not aware of it.
That's the fascinating part. We're talking about these deep-seated evolutionary forces that influence our behavior in ways we might not even realize.
This whole deep dive has been really eye-opening. I'm definitely going to look at the little red dress differently from now on.
Me too.
Okay.
But there's one final thought I want to leave you with. We've talked a lot about how the red dress is often seen through the lens of the male gaze. But what if we flip the script? What if it's not just about attracting men, but also about how women see themselves?
You mean it could be a symbol of female empowerment and self-expression?
Exactly. When a woman puts on a red dress, she's not just dressing for someone else, she's dressing for herself. She's making a statement about her confidence, her individuality, her power.
That's a really empowering thought. It makes me wonder if the red dress could be evolving, becoming less about the male gaze and more about female agency and self-love.
It's a fascinating possibility, and I'm excited to see how it unfolds. As we move towards a more equitable and inclusive society, I think we'll see the little red dress taking on even more nuanced and empowering meanings.
This has been an incredible journey. We've explored the history, the psychology, the cultural significance, even the potential future of the little red dress. It's amazing how much depth and complexity there is to this one garment.
It is, and I think that's the beauty of the deep dive. We take these seemingly simple things and uncover the hidden layers of meaning, the connections to broader societal trends, the profound impact they have on our lives.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So to all of you listening out there, what are your takeaways? What will you think about the next time you see or wear that little red dress? We've barely scratched the surface here today. If you're looking to dive deeper into this topic, the source material mentions a book called The Truth About Little Red Dress. You can find it on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
Happy reading. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.